You have spent your entire life trying to be a good person. Think about it. You are careful with your words. You are careful with your tone. You are hyper-vigilant, making sure you never, ever hurt anyone's feelings. You bend, you soften, you accommodate, and yet, look at the results. You are still misunderstood. You are still drained of your energy. And somehow, despite all your sacrifices, you are still treated like the problem. Here is the part nobody told you. The truth that polite society is too terrified to admit. The more you try to be good, the easier you are to control. Because good people don't fight back. They don't set hard boundaries. Instead, they explain. They justify. They apologize for things they never even did. And that is exactly how they keep you trapped. Your morality has been weaponized against you. They know that as long as you are terrified of being the bad guy, they hold the leash to your mind and your life. Now here is the forbidden truth, the one most people will never say out loud. Freedom does not come from being good. Freedom comes from being willing to be seen as bad. And it begins the moment you're no longer controlled by how others might label you. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see yourself forever. 1. The lie you were raised to believe. You weren't born a people pleaser. You were trained. Think back to the very beginning. You were taught that goodness was the highest virtue. But look closer at that training. You were told, be nice, be agreeable, be the child who doesn't make a scene, be easy to love. But there was a silent or else attached to those commands. You weren't being good because it was your nature. You were being good because it was your armor. You learned very early on that your safety depended on your likability. Maybe your home was a place of unpredictable weather. Maybe a parent's mood could shift like a storm, and you became the lightning rod. Maybe love felt like a prize you had to win, or a fragile thing that would shatter if you spoke your truth. In that environment, peace didn't come from justice. It came from your silence. So you adapted. You became the good one, the easy one, the one who anticipated everyone else's needs before they even had to ask. You built a personality out of other people's expectations. Jung understood something that polite society is too afraid to admit. What you call your goodness is often just fear in a tuxedo. It is the fear of rejection, the fear of conflict, the agonizing fear of being left behind by the tribe. True goodness requires a choice. You cannot claim to be virtuous if you don't have the capacity to be dangerous. If you are unable to say no, then your yes is meaningless. It's not a gift. It's a surrender. Fear does not create freedom. It creates compliance. It turns you into a harmless person. But as Jung famously noted, being harmless is not the same as being moral. A harmless person is simply a usable person. By repressing your anger, your boundaries, and your no, you didn't become a saint. You became a ghost. You disowned the very parts of yourself that were meant to protect you. And now, as an adult, you are finding that your good one reputation has become your prison. You are exhausted because you are defending a lie. And the only way out is to go back into the dark and find the parts of yourself you were told to bury. 2. The persona, the mask that owns you. Carl Jung had a specific name for the version of you that walks out the front door every morning. He called it the persona. In Latin, the word persona literally means mask. It was the face worn by actors in ancient theater to signal their role to the audience. You have a persona too. It is the version of you that is socially acceptable, the version that fits into your family's expectations, the version that doesn't make waves at work or cause discomfort at the dinner table. It is polished, polite, and predictable. But here is the dark truth Jung wanted us to understand. The persona is not who you are. It is a functional compromise between you and society. It is a costume you put on so that other people feel safe. The mask doesn't come for free. It has a staggering cost. To keep the persona spotless, you have to exile the parts of yourself that the world might find difficult. You lose your healthy anger, the very energy you need to set boundaries. You lose your raw truth, because truth is often messy and inconvenient. Slowly, without realizing it, you stop living in reality and start living in perception management. You aren't asking, "Is this right for me?" anymore. Instead, you are constantly asking, "How will this look to them?" You spend your precious nervous system energy maintaining an image of being fine, kind, and together, while underneath the mask, the real you is suffocating. There is a tragic irony at the heart of the people-pleaser's life. The more you protect your image, the more you abandon yourself. Every time you say yes when your soul is screaming no, you are betraying your own spirit to satisfy a mask. And because the persona is so effective, you eventually forget who lives underneath the performance. You become a stranger to your own desires. You look in the mirror and you don't see a human being. You see a well-maintained social asset. You are good, yes, you are helpful, certainly. But you are not present. You have become a ghost, haunted by your own reputation. And here is the most dangerous part. The world will never tell you to take the mask off. Why would it? The world doesn't reward your authenticity. It doesn't benefit from your messy, complicated truth. The world rewards predictability. People love your persona because it's useful to them. They love the version of you that never complains, the one who absorbs their stress, the one who is always available. They don't want you to be whole. They want you to be compliant. They will applaud your mask until the day you die, even if it kills you to keep it on. So the mask stays on, and as long as it stays on, you stay controlled. You are governable because your fear of the mask slipping is greater than your desire for freedom. The more you protect your image, the more you abandon yourself. Because an identity built on perception can never fully align with reality. And as long as your actions are shaped by how they will be seen, you are not fully choosing them. But what if I told you that the key to your prison is hidden in the very things you've tried to hide? To break the power of the persona, you have to go where you were told never to look. The shadow. 3. The invisible leash. Here is the most uncomfortable truth of your life. Nobody is forcing you to obey. There are no actual chains. If you looked at your life from the outside, you would see a person who is free to walk away, free to say no, and free to choose their own path. But you don't feel free. You feel a heavy, crushing weight every time you think about setting a boundary. That's the illusion. Your captors don't need to lock the door because they have built a prison inside your mind. They don't use force, they use guilt. And guilt is a far more effective jailer than any man with a gun. Watch how the leash works. It doesn't require a scream or a blow. It only requires a trigger, a certain look of disappointment from a parent, a heavy, theatrical sigh from a partner, or better yet, a label, a single word designed to strike at the very heart of your identity. Selfish, cold, you've changed, unreliable. The moment that word hits your ears, Your nervous system panics. You feel a spike of adrenaline, a flush of shame. And what do? You don't defend your boundary, you defend your reputation. Suddenly, you are in a courtroom that they control, begging for a verdict they never intended to change. You explain your intentions. You list your past sacrifices. You soften your stance until it disappears. Not because their argument is logical, but because you are pathologically afraid of being seen as the bad guy. This is the dark architecture of the human psyche that Carl Jung warned us about. Your morality, the very thing you pride yourself on, has become their leash. They have mapped the geography of your conscience. They know exactly where your goodness lives, and they have learned how to weaponize it against you. Toxic people don't accuse you because you've done something wrong. They accuse you because the accusation keeps you negotiating. It keeps you apologizing. It keeps you small. As long as you believe that you must clear your name to people who profit from your guilt, you are their property. You are not obeying them. You are obeying the terror of being disliked. They don't need to control your actions. They only need to control your fear. If they can make you feel bad for having needs, you will stop having needs. If they can make you feel cruel for saying no, you will never say no again. This is mind control in its purest form, where the victim polices themselves so the predator doesn't have to. But what happens when the fear stops working? What happens when you decide that your peace of mind is worth more than their opinion of you? What happens when someone calls you selfish, and instead of explaining yourself, you simply say, "Maybe I am"? That is the moment the leash snaps. That is the moment the prison walls dissolve. To find real freedom, you have to be willing to lose your good name in the eyes of people who used it to keep you in a cage. You have to be willing to become the villain. 4. Why good people are easy to use. The cost of being always understanding from the inside. It feels right. It feels like maturity, like emotional intelligence, like you've learned something about life that others haven't. You tell yourself you are being patient, that you are giving people space, that you understand things others might judge too quickly. And in many ways, that's true. You do see more. You do understand more. You do hold complexity where others simplify. But we need to stop looking at your intentions and start looking at the results. Look at your hands. They are tired. Look at your spirit. It is exhausted. You are resentful, even if you're too good to admit it. You are quietly disappearing, piece by piece, into the shadows of everyone else's needs. Every time you choose peace over your own truth, you are not being a peacemaker. You are being a martyr for a cause that doesn't love you back. Every time you swallow your words to avoid a conflict, you aren't managing the situation. You are betraying your own soul. You are teaching people that your boundaries are negotiable and that your feelings are optional. Here is the hard truth that Carl Jung wanted us to face. You didn't become kind. You became available. There is a profound difference. Kindness is a choice made from a position of strength. It is a gift given by someone who has the power to say no, but chooses yes. Availability, however, is a lack of defense. You became available for projection, the dumping ground for other people's unresolved shame. You became available for manipulation, the perfect tool for those who need a yes to get their way. You became available for emotional debt that was never yours to pay. And because you have no fangs, because you have disowned your ability to be difficult, the world does not reward you with gratitude. It rewards you with expectation. The more you give, the more they expect. The more you understand, the more they demand to be understood. In toxic systems, your generosity isn't seen as a virtue. It is seen as a baseline. They don't see your sacrifice as a gift. They see it as their right. And the moment you stop, the moment you finally run dry, they won't ask how you are. They will ask why you've become so selfish. You have become a specialist in understanding people who refuse to understand you. You spend hours analyzing their trauma, their childhood, and their triggers just to justify why they treat you poorly. But ask yourself, who is doing that for you? While you are busy being patient with their toxicity, you are being incredibly impatient with your own life. You are waiting for them to change so that you can finally start living. But reality doesn't reward purity. Reality rewards integration. It respects the person who can look a manipulator in the eye and say, "I understand why you are the way you are, but I will no longer be the person who pays for it." You have spent enough of your life being a placeholder for other people's shadows. You have spent enough of your nervous system defending a goodness that only leaves you empty. It is time to stop being a good person and start being a whole person. It is time to reclaim the parts of you that are allowed to be inconvenient, allowed to be cold, and allowed to leave. Because the only way to stop being used is to become a person who is willing to be disliked. 5. The scapegoat, the one who sees too much. Every broken system needs one thing to survive. It needs someone to carry the blame. It needs a scapegoat. If you are listening to this and you've spent your life feeling like the problem child, the difficult employee, or the black sheep, I want you to listen closely. You did not choose this role. You were drafted into it. But the reason they chose you is not because you were the weakest. It is because you were the most dangerous. In a world built on lies, the person who tells the truth is a threat. Carl Jung understood that groups protect their collective illusions at all costs. Often the scapegoat is simply the person with the clearest eyes. You see the inconsistency. You feel the imbalance. You recognize the patterns that don't quite make sense, even when no one is talking about them directly. And that awareness creates pressure. This is where the psychological gaslighting begins. The system turns on you with a set of pre-made labels. They call you too sensitive when you react to their cruelty. They call you difficult when you ask for basic respect. They call you unstable when your nervous system finally breaks under the weight of their projections. They reframe your memory as drama and your boundaries as betrayal. They need to convince everyone, including you, that you are the source of the chaos. Why? Because if you are the problem, then they don't have to look at themselves. Your guilt is their protection. Your shame is their peace of mind. You are not the problem. You are the disruption. And disruption is the ultimate sin to people who depend on control. To a narcissist, a boundary is an act of war. To a dysfunctional family, a truth teller is a terrorist. They didn't attack you because you were defective. They attacked you because your existence forced them to see parts of themselves they had spent decades trying to bury. You were the mirror they couldn't stand to look into, so they tried to shatter the glass. The tragedy of the scapegoat is that you often spend 20 years trying to be excellent just to prove you aren't what they say you are. You absorb everyone else's emotional debt, trying to balance a scale that was rigged before you were born. You think that if you can just be perfect enough, they will finally revise the verdict. But they won't. They can't. If they admit you are good, they have to admit they were wrong. And for a broken system, that is a fate worse than death. Your healing begins the moment you stop trying to clear your name in a court that is designed to find you guilty. It begins when you realize that their disapproval is not a sign of your failure. It is a sign of your sovereignty. You don't need to fix how they see you. You need to stop participating in what they need you to be. 6. The forbidden shift. Becoming the villain. Now, we reach the moment most people spend their entire lives avoiding. We arrive at the forbidden door, the question you were never allowed to ask in the house where you were raised, or in the relationships where you were managed. What if the only way out is to stop defending yourself? Think about the sheer amount of energy you have spent trying to explain to people who profit from misunderstanding you. What if you just stopped? What if freedom begins the moment you stop trying to be understood? To a narcissist, a boundary is an act of villainy. To a dysfunctional system, your no is an act of war. So, let them have their narrative. Let them paint you as the cold one, the selfish one, the one who changed. A saint needs approval to exist. A saint is a slave to their reputation. But a villain? A villain does not need the tribe to say they are good. A villain is free to act according to their own internal compass, regardless of the weather in someone else's mind. This is the forbidden shift. It is the moment you realize that your reputation in a toxic system is a hostage, not a mirror. When you stop trying to rescue that hostage, the captors lose their power. When you say, "If protecting my peace makes me the villain in your story, then I accept the role," the game ends. You have removed the friction. You have declined the invitation to the moral tribunal. You are no longer participating in the transaction where you trade your authenticity for their permission to exist. You are not becoming cruel. You are becoming untouchable by guilt. Carl Jung understood that wholeness requires fangs, not to bite, but to ensure that your yes has actual value. If you cannot survive being disliked, you are not moral. You are just programmable. Becoming the villain is actually the highest form of self-respect. It is the declaration that your internal reality is more real to you than their external projection. It is the death of the savior within you, that desperate part of you that thinks if you just explain more gently or love more deeply, they will finally be fair. They won't. But you don't need them to be. When you accept the role of the villain, you will experience something shocking, a death of guilt. You will set a boundary and survive their story about it. You will walk away and discover that the sky does not fall. You are not becoming evil. You are becoming sovereign. You are becoming a person who is no longer edible. And as we close this journey, you will realize that being called a villain by a manipulator is actually the highest compliment they can ever give you. It means you are finally unavailable. 7. The yes and strategy. By now, you see the prison of your goodness and the invisible leash of guilt. But how do you break it in the heat of the moment? How do you stop the old reflex of self-defense when the accusation lands in real time? The secret lies in understanding friction. Manipulation requires your resistance to function. It is a psychological game of tug-of-war. When someone calls you cold or selfish, they are throwing you a rope. They are counting on you to grab the other end and pull, to explain, to defend, to beg for a different label. As long as you are pulling back, they have a grip on your nervous system. To break the game, you must drop the rope. You do this through a strategy I call yes and. Imagine a toxic person looks you in the eye and says, "You've become so selfish. You only care about yourself now. The old you would rush in with evidence. You would list your sacrifices. You would say, "That's not true. Remember when I helped you with..." You would reopen the whole case, handing them the judge's gavel. But the sovereign, you does something far more dangerous. You remove the friction. You look at them with total composure and say, "Yes, if protecting my peace looks selfish to you, then that is what it is." Do you see what happened? You did not confess to a crime. You refused to wrestle with the frame. When you stop rejecting the label, the accusation loses all its oxygen. You aren't being sarcastic. You aren't being mean. You are simply stating that you accept the social cost of your boundaries. You are saying, "I value my internal reality more than your external definition of me." They say, "You're cold." You say, "I am less available than I used to be." That part is true. They say, "You think you're better than everyone now." You say, "If having standards for my life reads that way to you, I can live with that." This is devastating to a manipulator because it removes the performance they were counting on. They wanted you to flinch. They wanted to see you scramble. They wanted proof that your self-image was still their hostage. Instead, they meet a wall of acceptance. A wall is exhausting to argue with. When there is no tension, no defense, and no performance, the psychological game collapses. Because there is nothing left to control. They can no longer use your goodness as a hook because you have stopped worshiping the version of yourself that lives in their mind. This is the hidden power of the villain. A villain is not someone who hurts others. A villain is someone who has survived the death of their own good reputation. When you stop needing to be seen as good by people who profit from your guilt, you become impossible to manipulate. You stop drafting imaginary opening statements in your head. You stop checking who believes what. You stop begging for an acquittal in a theater built by people who need you to be guilty. You realize that their outrage is not a judgment. It is just a withdrawal symptom. They are mourning their loss of access to you. And that is their journey, not yours. You have become ungovernable by guilt. You have become internally sovereign. And as we step into the final truth of this journey, you will realize that being called a villain was never the end of the story. It was the first day of your life. 8. Ego death and psychological sovereignty. This is where the noise stops. This is where it gets quiet. To reach this point, something inside you had to die. Carl Jung called it ego death, but for you, it feels more like an eviction. The old self, the one who lived in the cracks of other people's moods, has finally run out of room. The part of you that needed universal approval to feel safe, it is gone. The part that stayed up at night, replaying conversations and practicing apologies, it has grown silent. The version of you that survived by shrinking, by being easy, and by trading your truth for a temporary peace. That version of you no longer has a pulse. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not a lightning bolt. It's a slow, steady sunrise. But one day, something shifts. You set a hard boundary with a person who used to terrify you, and instead of a panic attack, you sleep peacefully. You are slandered, misread, and misunderstood by people who refuse to see you, and you remain steady. You walk away from a toxic system without explaining your reasons, and for the first time in your life, you don't look back. This is psychological sovereignty. Most people spend their lives trying to gain power over others so they can finally feel safe. But sovereignty is different. It is not about controlling others. It is about being entirely, utterly free from their control. It is the realization that your internal court is the only one with the right to pass judgment on your soul. You are no longer a colony of other people's opinions. You are no longer governed by guilt storms. You have integrated your fangs, accepted your shadow, and buried the savior who nearly killed you. When they call you the villain now, it doesn't hurt. It sounds like music. Because you finally know what that word really means. It means you are unavailable for occupation. It means you have finally come home to yourself. They will call you different. They will say you've become cold, distant, and hard to reach. They will look at the space you've created for yourself and complain that you've changed. And when they do, I want you to smile, because they will be right. You have changed. You are no longer easy to control. You are no longer easy to guilt. You are no longer available to be the shelf where they store their emotional debt, or the mirror where they fix their own reflection. You have stopped volunteering for your own depletion. Understand this. Villain is just a word that people who depend on your submission use for someone who stopped obeying. You didn't become worse. You didn't become evil. You became whole. You integrated the strength you were told to hide, and in doing so, you became a person who can finally say no and mean it. If this journey hit something real inside you today, if you felt the chains loosen just a little, I want you to make a declaration. Type this in the comments. I choose freedom. This is not a promise to become cruel. It is a promise to stop being controlled by the fear of being misunderstood. It is your first act of psychological sovereignty. And if you're ready to go deeper, stay with us. Because once you stop fearing the villain label, the next question is even more powerful. How do you become invisible to manipulation forever? Watch the next video immediately. Let's take the next step into a life where guilt no longer opens your door. Welcome to yourself.